Thank you, everyone. We're getting started here.
Virginia House and Senate, and with our 66th governor, L. Douglas Baldwin, as we defend Virginia's top-ranked public colleges and universities from the political attacks coming from the Trump and Republican administration. That's right, Virginia's educational system is ranked #1 in the nation. According to CNBC, our #1 competitive strength is our educational system. And we earned that ranking. We've invested big, over $2 billion last year, and now another $787 million this year, thanks to the leadership of our Democratic majority. But what does the Trump and Virginia Republicans do when they see successful systems? They try to tear it down. But make that make sense? It's disturbing. Republicans appointed boards of visitors coordinating campaigns to oust strong, effective university leaders. Trump's Department of Education and Department of Justice pressuring presidents to resign. Threats to withhold funding and outright executive overreach. What happened to the so-called party of small government? Thomas Jefferson and George Mason must be rolling over in their graves. Let's not forget what this is really all about. It's about the people. It's about our students. It's about the next generation. In Virginia, we put our money where our values are, investing in students and preparing young people for a brighter future. Our world-class schools don't just serve Virginians, they attract students from across the country. And Republicans want to destroy all of it just to prove or shove Project 2025 down our throats. We didn't vote for Trump. We didn't vote for Project 2025. And we're not going to let them hijack our public institutions. Now, let's be clear. This is a coordinated political campaign. They started with General Wins at VMI. Then they came for President Bryan at UVA. And now they're set their sights on President Washington at George Mason. Well, let me tell you something. You don't stop a bully by backing down. You stop a bully by punching back. And luckily for us, I always carry my boxing gloves in the trunk. So today you're going to hear from leaders from across Virginia who are ready to fight to protect our schools, our students, and our future. We're not backing down, we're just getting started. And with that, I now bring up Leader Charnel Herring.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's so good to be here. I'm glad that you're here today. I am a proud alumna of George Mason University. I've said many times that without the education of George Mason University, I would not be standing here as the first Black person and first woman to ever serve as a majority leader in the House in Virginia's history. George Mason has a proud history of giving non-traditional students an opportunity to achieve. That is why it is distinguished as one of Carnegie Opportunity Colleges and Universities. I know firsthand what a George Mason University education can do. I was homeless in high school. My education and future was impacted by a bad economic turn, despite coming from a hardworking family. I thought college would be impossible to reach. The third step program George Mason gave me a shot, the resources and the support to demonstrate that college level work was well within my reach, and it changed my life. I earned my degree in economics, went on to law school, and it's with the foundation of George Mason, they provided me with the opportunity to continue to work at a prestigious law firm, dealing with infrastructure and communications, and family law, and so much more. I volunteer for my community, and it is with the foundation of George Mason University Education that I ran for office to make the voices of my community heard and to uplift those who have too long and too often been silenced. My story is not the only one that comes from this university. Now, President Trump and his Republican allies want to politicize the opportunity that was given to me, to so many first-generation students, and to diverse perspectives which enrich our college institutions and our college education. It is this hunt, and this hunt is done all while punishing successful leaders like President Washington for doing his job to uplift every student challenge them, and give them a shot at a better future, no matter their zip code, their background, how much money their family has, or their age. These Republican attacks aren't just about a president. They're about the thousands of George Mason University students that are walking across campus right now, who are watching us right now, and wondering why their future is being used as a disingenuous political game. These attacks are an attack on their future and the future of Virginia's children. Their lives are not a game. Unlike Virginia Republicans, I will not stay silent while extremists with an agenda try to muffle the voices of educators in an effort to dismantle the institution that helped shape me. In Virginia, we believe in facts. We believe in freedom, and we believe in the future of our students. This generation of students deserves better than to be caught in the crosshairs of a partisan lawfare. They deserve investment, not interference. They deserve opportunity, not obstruction. And they deserve degrees, not delusions. And as someone who once walked the campus with a simple dream of a better future and not much more, I owe it to the students, to my family, and to the constituents to stand up and fight back. George Mason gave me my heart, my start, and it is my heart. I will not let Trump, Virginia Republicans, or anyone erase the most precious of starting lines that our Commonwealth has to offer. I thank you, and now let me introduce my colleague and caucus chair, Kathy Tran, to add her voice to protecting education in Virginia.
Thank you so much for sharing your powerful story, Leader Herring. Let's call this what it is. These attacks on our universities are not about performance. They're about politics. Trump and Virginia Republicans are working overtime to manufacture a narrative and, frankly, a crisis where there is none, just to lay the groundwork to fire or force out the heads of our most respected institutions. They're not interested in facts. They're interested in control, but the facts matter. And let's share some of them with you. Under President Ryan's leadership, the University of Virginia rose to become the #4 university in the country. The Darden School of Business is now ranked the #1 public business school in America, and UVA raised a record-breaking $6 billion in its most recent fundraising campaign. And at George Mason University, President Gregory Washington has had a truly extraordinary tenure. GMU is now the first four-year public university in Virginia to top 40,000 students, and enrollment keeps growing. The student-to-faculty ratio remains steady at 7-1. Fundraising has shattered records, more than $100 million raised annually. And rankings, the school's rankings are skyrocketing. In 5 years, GMU's Wall Street Journal Public University ranking jumped 5 spots, and its U.S. News rankings rose 19 spots. And GMU isn't just rising in these numbers, it's really leading in values. It's in the top 20 for free speech. It's a national model for inclusivity, and #1 in the nation for our military and veteran students. So again, let's just be really clear. This is not about performance. This is about politics. Because Virginia's higher education system isn't just strong, it is thriving, and we're not going to let partisan politics tear it down. And with that, I bring up the Senate Majority Leader, Scott Serval.
Well, thank you for being here today. First, I just want to talk to you about what public education does. I'm a 13th generation Virginian. The first 12 generations of my kin didn't go to college because they didn't have a state-supported college, a higher education system, or a public education system. My grandfather wasn't able to make it past 8th grade because Franklin County didn't have a high school. Neither did my grandmother. My mother was the first one in the family to go to college. She went to Longwood University and studied to be a teacher because public education was finally available at that time. I went to a public elementary school. I went to a public intermediate school. I went to a public high school. Taxpayers invested in my education in JMU, and taxpayers invested in my education as an attorney at UVA Law. I would not be here today but for the money the taxpayers have invested in my education and my ability to do what I did today. By the way, they also made it possible for me to serve as a governor's fellow to Governor L. Douglas Weiler in 1993. This thing understand the full breadth of our system. Virginia's colleges and universities enroll 524,000 students across public and private institutions in our state. Our community college system serves approximately 144,000 students alone, which is 4 times the enrollment of either George Mason or Virginia Tech. Northern Virginia Community College has 53,000 students by itself. Our 15 four-year institutions enrolled 211,000 full-time students last year. In terms of economic impact, our public higher education system, higher, not secondary, but higher education system, has a total economic footprint of $52.4 billion in our Commonwealth. Every dollar spent on public higher education results in an additional $1.89 of state revenue and $25.59 of additional state gross domestic product. UVA alone contributes $7.2 billion in GDP and 56 million in annual state tax revenues. International students, which the Trump administration is threatening, contributed $807 million to Virginia's higher education learning institutions in the 2023 to 24 academic period. The Virginia's institutions collectively received about $3 billion in tuition and fee revenue and more than $2 billion in state general funds in 2023. Okay, this is a massive system that is currently under attack by the Trump administration that our Republican colleagues in Virginia are refusing to do anything about. What's happening today in our state is the Republican Party is bowing down to their dear leader, President Trump, and refusing to do anything. I want to make clear that in Virginia, our Board of Visitors run our universities. The General Assembly controls our universities, as it said is in the Virginia Code, not President Trump and not the United States Department of Justice. We've now heard from outraged alumni, teachers, students of our number one system in America. You've heard it. CNBC, when they looked at our business rankings, it says that one of the main reasons, the pillars underscoring the foundation of why we get these rankings is because of our education system. We have the #1 education system in America. Just yesterday, you heard the business community in Northern Virginia speak out. The Northern Virginia Technology Council, the Northern Virginia Chamber, the Loudoun Chamber, the Prince William Chamber all signed a letter and said, leave George Mason alone. It's a critical pillar of our economy, not just in Northern Virginia, for the entire state. George Mason, I want to just note, aside from the fact that UVA, I believe, is not #4, but actually the #1 institution in America, public institution in America. George Mason is ranked #1 by U.S. News as being #1 for best value, for internships, and for upward mobility. So I just would ask, if you get a chance to ask a Republican, if you see one on the street, if you can find anybody that will speak on the record to you about this, I would ask them, what exactly is the purpose of attacking the best public higher education institution in the country that we have here, the crown jewel in our state? What's the point of attacking it? And what is the point of attacking the #1 school in upward social mobility in the country, the best value in the country? What exactly is the point? What's the motive? You fill in the blank, but ask that question. And I can tell you that if the Republicans aren't going to stand up to defend our system, we will. And that's why we're here today, and that's also why we're in court tomorrow. So thank you for being here today. And with that, I'm going to turn over to my caucus chairman, I believe, Senator Mandy Locke.
Good morning. I'm honored to be here with Governor Wilder and my Senate and House leaders and colleagues, but I'm saddened to be here to address the issue that has brought us here today. I have spent well over half my professional life in higher education, both in the classroom and as an administrator. As a member of the Senate, I serve on the Education and Health Committee and as chair of higher education. In these roles, I have come to know leaders, administrators, faculty, and students in Virginia's institutions of higher education across this Commonwealth. Consequently, I've witnessed firsthand the remarkable progress George Mason University has made under President Washington's leadership. The investigation launched by the Trump administration's Department of Justice not only is unwarranted, it is deeply disturbing and damaging. GMU's students and faculty have worked tirelessly to create a campus that embraces innovation, academic excellence, and belonging. GMU is a community where first-generation college students, immigrants, students of color, and people from every background can thrive. To see that community come under attack by Donald Trump because they dare to live out the mission of being altogether different is disheartening. This baseless, politically motivated probe by the DOJ has the complicit support of Glenn Youngkin, Winsome Earl Sears, and Jason Mieres. By aligning themselves with Trump's agenda and refusing to stand up for our institutions, they are signaling that political ideology matters more than academic excellence, more than our students, more than our faculty, and more than the university community. This investigation is a distraction to our campuses, demoralizing to our faculty, and is sending a chilling message to students who simply want to learn in a supportive environment. Virginia is the #1 ranked public higher education system in this country, and yet we're being targeted for doing exactly what good schools should do: educate, include, and lead. We stand with President Washington and the George Mason University community, and we will not allow political fear-mongering to derail the future of our students or this marvelous institution. I will now turn it over to Delegate and Chairman of Appropriations, Luke Torrey.
Good morning. You all have heard from my colleagues. They have made the extraordinary case as to why this current administration of leadership in the Commonwealth of Virginia has turned over our system of higher education to the federal government. The question that we raise is why? Why do we have a governor who sits silently and an attorney general who sits silently and allow our institutions of higher learning to be turned over to the federal government to be dismantled? We have dismantled the leadership at UVA. Now they're working on dismantling the leadership at George Mason University. And the question we must ask, not only those of us around in this room, but you, the Board of Visitors, the parents, the students, the question must be asked, why are universities being turned over to the federal government to be governed? When we look at our institutions of higher learning, they all have been successful, educating domestic and international students. Why are we under attack? Why will not the governor answer us and tell us why we are under attack? Why will not the Attorney General answer us and tell us why the Commonwealth of Virginia higher education system is under attack? Those questions need to be answered. And I'm so delighted that we have a champion of higher education with us today, the 66th Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Honorable L.W. Wilder, will be coming before us now. Governor Wilder.
Thank you very much, Chairman Torian and ladies and gentlemen. Bad guy is deported. They said so many nice things. Anything I said would be bad. I told my good friend Mamie Locke that I'm glad to see her speak to what's going on. Donald Trump doesn't run Virginia. He's not in office in Virginia. He doesn't appoint people he board in Virginia. I'm reminded of reading relative to Roman history and how the Senate and Cicero, whenever he spoke in the Senate, he would end his speeches by saying, "And Carthage must be destroyed." It's a constant reminder as to what needs to take place. That's why I really I want to thank the members of the Assembly and citizens here and those across the Commonwealth. I spent the better part of my life trying to expand opportunity in the Commonwealth. I know the power of public education because I lived. I also know the pain of being locked out. I was 8 blocks away from my home, and 8 blocks away from where Patrick Henry made his famous speech. St. John's Church, give me liberty, I'll give me that. And I would ask my father and said, if he said that, and we're coming here to this church to look at him, how great a man he was, what did he do? My father said he went back up to Ashland and maintain his plantation of slaves. And doesn't that tell it all? You're not elected to be in office, you're elected to represent the people. Speak for the people. They can't do anything to you. If they don't re-elect you, so what? You've said what you need to say. I know the power of publication. I know the pain of being locked out. I attended Virginia University, Virginia Union. I had no other option. I didn't have the money to go to Virginia State. That was the, quote, state school. My father made it clear that there would be one-way transportation, give you a bus ticket, streetcar ticket to go. You want to use it to go on. Not. But I'm not going to be able to give you a bus ticket too. What was the tuition at Virginia Union? $90 a year, $150 a year, and they'd give you a scholarship if you maintain a C average. That was the kind of education. There were people who knew that Virginia Union was broke and poor and got nothing from the state. Nothing. Not a dime. And so I went to Howard University School of Law. Why? I couldn't go to a school of law again. Why? Because I look like this. I look like this. Don't forget that. Education is the great equalizer. It's the key that unlocks the door, but only if it's protected, only if it's defended. I said it before, I'll say it again. It unlocks the door, but what we're seeing today is not about policy differences. It's about a pattern. A coordinated effort to silence, punish, and erase. At Virginia Military Institute, Youngkin sent one of his disciples out there to declare DEI as dead. And I think the actual quote was, that guy is dead. And shortly thereafter, the first black superintendent, General Cedric Wins, who was first black president and superintendent, he got rid of him. Even though the Northern administration and even they released a report shortly before that saying that racism and sexism still existed. At VMI, I know about the history of VMI. I was informed by my clerk when I was in the state senate. Said, guess what? As a state senator, you can send a youngster to VMI with a 4-year scholarship. It's in the code. I said, what? My clerk. My clerk was white, but he was a decent person, a good person. So I can find me somebody, and I did. This young man was came to be one of the few that would go to VMI as a black person. I also wrote it like in terms of racism and sexism in regards to women. I also appointed the first black person ever to serve on the board at VMI. I'm first woman, sorry, serve on the board at VMI. Did she catch it? Oh, she caught it, but she did. And when I was governor, my attorney general Well, the VMI made a very famous speech when she was heralded. She said, let VMI, VVMI. Don't worry about winning or the DI. My own attorney general. I had to go and Jim Dyke's lab, he was my Secretary of Education. He knows exactly what I'm I had to get outside counsel to represent me back then. I'm not talking 100 years ago. So don't think it won't creep back, creep up, and eat you if you let it do it. George Mason University, the largest public institution in Virginia. Ray Irvine, publicly and baseless, accused of promoting anti-Semitism. One of my very dear friends, very big financier to many people who run an office in Virginia, he happens to be Jewish, and he happens to be a great supporter of Greg Washington. Hey, he would not be supporting it for anti-Semitic. That's right. Someone just get his straight. Show it. Where's the evidence? Where are the facts? For this man to be kicked and dogged and fired, and that's where it's trying to head. Jim Ryan had been pointed out, was targeted by investigation and resigned due to third thought. Right. I know at Virginia Commonwealth, under the leadership of Mike Rao, more than $100 million. I'm not talking about penny. Of taxpayers' dollars was wasted on a failed real estate project, one that never materialized. Benefited no one, it remains unexplained. I brought it to Governor Youngkin's attention, and he told me, think that this is a wake-up call. Well, he ain't woke yet. And I mean woke in the truest sense of the word. What did he do about it? What did he do about it? Can anyone in here in the media tell me where the money was and why it was absolutely wasted? I know people who bring big money at these universities, people of color who contribute. If this had happened at Virginia State or Norfolk State, would you see the same sounds? No. The hypocrisy is obvious. You cannot dismantle the EI under pretense of stewardship and then turn a blind eye to mismanagement at the top that oversees. You cannot and must not forget we promised a proud British Board of Education that the system wasn't just about classroom seating. It was about constitutional equality. Constitutional equality. That government would not segregate, silence, or discriminate under any guide. What we are seeing now is a coordinated rollback, a strategic retreat from the promise that generations fought to secure diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that press their obligations under our Constitution. Met with the group of youngsters from my high school alma mater coming in. They took pictures, and one of the girls said, not the real one, they said, you look the same. I said, I ain't the same. I got a few years left. But then she went on to say that we read about you. I tell a story sometimes about this young boy. I was in church and the minister, but everyone got getting out, and he wanted me to stand with him and shake hands with the pew as a believer. And I did, and his son was running around. He said, son, be quiet. And so the son, I had looked at me and said, I understand that, and I was told who you were, but haven't you been dead? His father got out there. I said, no, it's the truth. I have been dead in some people's minds, but I'm now alive and I can think. That's why today I'm calling on Governor Youngkin and the Virginia General Assembly to act with urgency to fight it. Withhold further funding from any public college or university, including VCU, that demonstrates gross financial mismanagement until a full independent forensic unit audit is completed and made public. Oh, find out where that $100 million went. Somebody know. Why don't you want to know? Eradicate intimidation of university leaders and reaffirm the independence of Virginia's public institutions. We don't need more press releases. We need accountability. We need transparency. And I say this with an apology. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are not threats. They are tools of fairness. They're grounded in the constitutional values that shape this country and its power. Threatens us, what really threatens us, is unchecked power. I remind you now, Donald Trump is not living in Virginia. He's not the president, he's not the governor of Virginia. He doesn't do anything in Virginia, but sometimes ask for money and cooperation. So let's get the target straight. Let's make certain who we want to do what we want and say what it is we want. And what really threatens us is unchecked power. And what we need is the voices of those elected by the people to represent the people by their actions, by their voices. Not just at election time. And I say this to the people when they say they're going to run for office. And I want your vote, I want your support. I used to ask the question. Some of you who didn't see me know what that question is. What have you done? What are you trying to do? And what is it that you want to do? And if not now, when? When are you going to say, after you get elected? To speak at an event like this, I want you people here who are here today, particularly those in the African and legislature. It doesn't have to be a ceremony for you to speak. Speak as often as you can. When a money bill comes up, going somewhere else for something else that you had no interest in other than the fact that, why couldn't I get money for this? Bring it to the attention of those who especially demand what's right, criticize what's wrong, and understand that people will be with you. I can't walk through the streets without people coming to me and saying, can you come back? Can you run for something? I said, don't you think I deserve a little rest? They said, no. And they'll say this to me, Secretary. They'll say, can't you get them, the rest of them, to do what you're trying to do? Are they doing it? And I say, I think they want to. But sometimes you have to do the thing of them too. That's what I'm going to say. The people today are observing. Virginia has always helped define the course of this nation, and now in 2025, an election year, we're facing a defining moment once again. We see candidates running for office who need to convey to the people how they will defend their rights. Education, freedom, health, and the future. The people are woke, and the people are watching. And the people will remember who stood up and who stood there. God bless you. Glad you. Oh my God.
All right, Claire, what were your questions? The leader come up here. Thank you so much. I know Tyler got one up there.
I have two questions. I guess my first question is, what's the strategy here? We heard a lot about the Department of Justice, about Donald Trump. What can the Virginia General Assembly do to hold Donald Trump accountable, considering he's a federal leader and you guys don't have control over him?
I think Governor Wilder said it best. You know, that we only can deal with the things within our purview. And what we've been controlling is what happens in Virginia. And Virginia leadership has a responsibility to stand up. Here's the issue. In our code, in statute, it clearly states that these boards, every single board that's funded by public dollars, every single board is under the control at all times. That's what the code says. It's a quote. At all times shall be under the control of the General Assembly. So now we have the opportunity, the General Assembly, to take an in-depth view of what's going on in all of these public universities, especially in light of the fact that they have totally been politicized in a way that we've never seen before. What happened to Jim Ryan is a travesty. What's happening in Great Washington right now is a travesty. You know, some of the mismanagement and malfeasance that the governor alleges at BCU is a travesty. Now the General Assembly has an opportunity, I believe now, in this environment to step up to the plate and make sure that it's not only the federal overreach that we see, but there is state overreach right now. We have to look at every board. We need to look at share. I'm hopeful. I'm going to work with the Senate here in the state and talk about maybe forming a select joint committee. So look at these boards and call in some of these past board members to see how we got here, how many fair voters, all these to account. We have the responsibility not only to the governor, he recommends, but we have to confirm their appointment. And so we have to start taking that responsibility a lot more serious in light of the fact that they're doing things that we've never seen before. This is not just about governance. This is about pushing forward. This is not about policy. This is a political viewpoint. And I wonder what they think about, you know, going backwards. The opposite of equity is unequal. The opposite of diversity is homogeneous. They want everybody to be the same. You know, we can't go backwards. Thomas Jefferson said it even when that time. He said, I trembled at the thought that we serve a just God. And he knew at that time that there were things that were wrong that needed to be fixed. And so now we have an opportunity at the General Assembly to take a look at it. I'm grateful that the Senate is doing some stuff in a lawsuit, I think, that may be going on tomorrow, I think, to deal with some issues. But we have to make sure this is not just about politics. This is about the future of the Commonwealth as we move forward. And we have a responsibility right now because there are people, real people being hurt right now. And people are using the pretext of anti-Semitism to attack. We've all passed bills against hate crime. All of us here. That's what we've done. We've stood up against anti-Semitism here. We voted for it. We passed the bill. The governor signed. So don't try to use that as a pretext. This is the time now to make sure that we're protecting our students. We're protecting our Commonwealth. We have according to the business community, we have the #1 public school education system and the #1 higher ed system. These people are hurting our institutions, and we have a responsibility now to take another look at it. We may have to even do a JLOC study to see how we got it and see if we need to reorient how we select board members, reorient how we approve. Obviously, we have a situation right now where the governor appoints people. They start serving before they've been confirmed. They start making votes and after we told them they won't be confirmed, which to me is malfeasance. You've been told you won't be confirmed and you go on the board and sit and vote. So we have a problem here. I hate to give you that long answer, but you asked, so I have the answer with detail and specificity because that's what the moment requires.
Yeah, go look at what Thomas Jefferson said when he was governor. At the time, I think Virginia only had one state-supported university, which was William & Mary. He said we needed to create more. And he said we needed to create UVA. And part of the reason for that, he said, the key to having a functional democracy is having an educated population. Higher education was key to having a functioning democracy. You want to know why Trump doesn't like higher education? He doesn't want a functioning democracy.
That's it.
Okay?
That's it. Right
So
there.
why is this all under assault? That's at the root base. In terms of what the speaker just talked about, our current code says that these boards of visitors are charged with managing these universities. If they're not going to manage the university, if they're not going to defend their school, if they're not going to fight for their school, the code says that the governor can remove boards for malfeasance or nonfeasance. Malfeasance is doing a bad job. Nonfeasance is not doing your job. You see now the faculty at UVA and George Mason both write letters. And the UVA passed a resolution saying they had no confidence in their board of visitors. George Mason just wrote a letter. Their faculty wrote a letter just a couple of days ago saying that their boards of visitors are failing to defend their schools.
Right.
Okay? That's why we have to look at how we appoint these people and how these boards of visitors. We're going to reform that when we come back in January. I don't think we need to wait for a JLR study. I think we have plenty of ideas that we can act on when we get back in January. The other thing is, these schools often don't have a lawyer. You can't fight another lawyer if you don't have a lawyer. And unfortunately, the way representation works in our system, our schools don't have a choice as to who they pick. They're stuck with an attorney general who nobody can get to give a statement about. And we tried to fix this 2 years ago. We tried to fix this by giving them the right to hire their own lawyer 2 years ago. Governor vetoed it. So from my perspective, there's been a deliberate, coordinated effort to get this done at the very beginning. You remember the first two things Jason Marius did when he became Attorney General, aside from firing 30 people in his office. He fired the lawyer UVA, he fired the lawyer George Mason, and put in somebody who was Heritage Foundation Connect. And now you look what's happening. You know, they don't have a lawyer. So there's some big reforms we need to do in the system to get around, and I think you're going to see some big changes. And we also have Board of Visitor nominations pending. We have 8 people that we're going to find out what happens about in court either tomorrow or Monday. There's, I think, 58 more nominations the governor has made that are still out there for us to decide whether or not we want to confirm or not. The speaker's right. We're going to look at them really carefully. We're going to decide whether these people are actually capable of exercising their own independent judgment and doing the job they've been nominated to do. Those are just things we can do in the short term and the medium term. But it's clear we have to make some big reforms in our system to maintain our #1 rating.
Yeah. All right. We got a lot to get to, so who's next? We got Julie Carey over here.
So in the UVA situation, that emerged very quickly. There wasn't time to mobilize public support. Very different in George Mason's case. I mean, there's a groundswell of support for President Washington. Claude, what is your realistic expectation about whether that will make a difference and whether he will have any different fate than President Ryan did?
I mean, it's going to come down. I mean, this is actually the U.S. Department of Justice coming down on this situation. So we'll see. I mean, we just saw yesterday Columbia, University settled with the government. I think $100 million, $200 million, something crazy. I mean, there is the type of assault on higher ed right now is crazy. And I understand, there are some larger schools who have a history that these Heritage Foundation folks have had on their list to target forever. But George Mason, George Mason is not that. And if you look at George Mason, UVA, the applications are up. The schools are doing well. Their funding is well. The alumni still support the school. I think all we can do right now is raise awareness because the U.S. Gov, the federal government has put a target on their back. And there's nothing that the state legislature can do other than make sure that when we have a board and we have attorneys that are actually fighting the federal government. Right now, they have totally capitulated. Jason Marius has capitulated, he has surrendered. In fact, he's cooperating with it. And so we have a responsibility, I think, as we move forward to put in some guardrails. And I think to do that, we need the public support. So we need to let them know what's happening now. So when we do make these changes, they'll understand why we have to do it.
All right, time's running short, so I know that's all Kate over there.
Are you able to talk about discussions you might be hearing about who might be appointed next as the president at UVA?
I can tell you my view is that based at UVA, and if they do anything to Dr. Washington at George Mason, they should probably, this board needs to listen very clear. They probably should put a freeze on any hire because we will not support whatever it is that they do. This is an illegitimate board right now that has been appointed and been told that they will not be appointed permanently. So if they go about selecting a president when they know they will not be there in January, that's wrong. So I hope that they will put a moratorium and a freeze on any search for a president right now. They have an interim. They need to sit tight because we're going to make changes in January. They should expect that. It would be totally irresponsible and they would be disrespecting and ignoring the will of the General Assembly, which is the will of the people. If they go ahead and go forward with the president or appointment of a president of the UVA.
I've already publicly said the exact same thing weeks ago. I said they should not make any steps towards picking a permanent president of UVA. Right now, there are, I think, 5 vacancies on that board based on the actions the Senate's already taken. There are, I think, 4 more people that are in play right now that the governor has nominated, in addition to the 5 we've already rejected. And that means that come next July 1st of 2026, when there's a new governor, there's the potential to have 9 new members on a 16-member board, which means there would be an entirely different majority, in all likelihood, on that board of visitors deciding things. And so they shouldn't make any permanent decisions. Things that have long-term impact on that school right now, because the changes that are coming, whether we act on changing the law or not, there's going to be a different majority on that board.
If I were president thinking about coming to UVA right now, I would think very twice about whether I'm going to be there for Young Shannon. They probably ought to think about that if they're thinking about taking a job there. Because we're going to try, I tell you right now, with this illegitimate board, we're going to be trying to reverse that decision.
I'm sorry, right out of time. This is the last one, but we can do one off after this. So Cam, I see you up there.
I was just going to say, I know some of you mentioned this in your comments, but can you speak to what the DOJ is saying as the basis of their investigations?
They said he promoted, first of all, they said he promoted diversity. And then they said that he failed to combat anti-Semitism. That's the base. We don't have any proof of any of that. In fact, I think more than 50 Jewish professors came out in support of Dr. Washington.
Yes, they did.
So we have to be, and student groups. So we just,
Jewish legislators.
and all of the Jewish legislators support him.
Right.
So we just have to be thoughtful about what this pretext is that they're doing, what this red herring is that they're pointing to try to get an outcome that they want, to remove the second black president in less than a few months with General Wynn's and VMI. This is a pattern and Dr. Washington at George Mason. So we see it, we have a responsibility to call it out, and hopefully we'll be able to put some guardrails in place come January.
Should you think the allegations aren't true? Is that the allegations made by the Department of Justice?
We don't know. We haven't seen them. You seen them? You seen any specificity? When you do, let me know. All they do is make these charged statements, and then the statement is so charged. It's like saying, "Do you still beat your wife?" What's the right answer? You know what I mean? So that's what they do. That's what they're doing right.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.